Hey, okay, we must be live. So welcome to an SE review. I'm joined by Lisa, Reid, and Dali. So we're going to be reviewing a video. I spoke with the Hobart Village trustee. His name is Vanya, and we discussed gender, pride, and God. And it is a really long video, so I'm not going to say too much more because we probably should get started right away.
Yeah, this is originally 2 videos, and then you created this.
We talked for roughly 2 hours, and I cut a lot out just so that we could get through this as a review. So just note that it's been cut down a lot. I put in a little static noise every time I made like a jump cut. So that's pretty much that.
All right, let's get into the video.
So what I was dying to say, when you first walked up, when you started talking about how long I've been doing this, et cetera. Whoa!
Yeah, you got
the chair sunk a little bit there.
Why.
So I was going to ask if you had seen the interview with Jerry, and you said you had seen it.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
What did you think of that, actually? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, I saw highlights. I didn't watch it through the entirety, but I think it was good. He asked fair questions, allowed him to share his side, but also it wasn't just softballs, where somebody, an average person in the street could come up, ask him those questions, and then he could give his honest answers.
Okay, awesome. And what I'm doing here is called street epistemology. Have you ever heard that term before?
I have not until you hinted at it in the Jerry video, where is it similar to street evangelism along the lines of sharing?
It's kind of the opposite in a way. So street evangelism would be, at least I would define it.
Sure.
Maybe you could define it differently.
Sure.
But it's where you're trying to take an idea, a belief that probably the preacher has, and trying to kind of pass that on to whomever is listening, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And with street epistemology, it's kind of the opposite. It's about challenging the beliefs of the interlocutor, and then seeing if they have used a reliable method to determine what they believe is true.
Sure. Very nice.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome.
So I guess you're down for that, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
Awesome. What I thought, if you're comfortable with it, if you just want to read your post, and then everybody who's watching knows what we're actually talking about.
Absolutely.
And when you're reading it, if you do want to expand it all, feel free to. I'm not going to handcuff you to these words or anything.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, so I mean, it's June of 2022, as it has been for the past few years, or maybe as late as Bill Clinton's proclamation back in the 90s. June was declared Pride Month and has become more and more prominent, I would say, probably especially in the last 5 years. So in June of 2022, early in June, I made this post, specifically to June 1st, which kicked off Pride Month. I said, on this day, we are mindful of respect for all, but also of science, where God made only 2 genders. We need to support all kids, but without punishing them to question who they are, pushing them to question who they are, or change their gender by age 16. So, I mean, just off the bat, we don't want to force kids who are just growing up, who are trying to figure out who they are, to question who they are without parental consent, as the next line goes on to say. We can't say that parental consent is needed for everything, minus gender change and brainwashing that's happening in schools. Books in grade school are borderline porn. A push to change identities and a celebration of drag queens as a child's identity should not be accepted as the norm. Let boys be boys and girls be girls. No, men can't get pregnant, unlike the emoji says. No, men beating women in sports is not uplifting to women, as latest college swimming you may have seen. Yes, we all crave an identity, but it cannot be rooted in what we are seeing today. Let's use June and every month to promote care, love, and support for all boys and girls. Let's not use June to change genders, or the definition of marriage between a man and a woman. Let's take pride in who we are as the image of God. Let's take pride in loving those around us and loving those around us. Let's take pride in our identity that should go beyond a physical change or behavior. And finally, let's truly practice inclusivity and diversity and not twist those words to fit a political narrative from our friends on the left who use such words way too selectively and narrowly.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you reading it out. Now everybody's on the same page with the post and what we're talking about. And I guess I have a couple things.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Pierce?
Yeah, go ahead.
How did you meet this guy? Like, what was the backstory? How did this come to happen?
Sure. So he made his post on his public page on Facebook, and then someone else took a screenshot of it and posted it in what's called the Green Bay Llama. It's kind of like just this political news kind of Facebook group. I saw it there, and I just said, hey, sent him a message, said, hey, do you want to talk? And he agreed, and the rest is history.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of claims there. Let me just try to recap. Probably not all of them, but it was like this one, there are only two genders. Gender is immutable. Parental consent should be required for, I forgot what exactly, but some books in schools are borderline porn. Drag queens are being celebrated. Men beating women at sports is not uplifting. We are made in the image of God, and we should practice diversity and inclusivity without political bias.
And then marriage is only between a man and a woman. That one.
That was another one. Okay. Right.
How did you not respond to all of those things? You were just quiet the whole time.
Well, what happened was I actually had printed off his post, and I was actually just going to use it for my reference. But then, like, we were talking before I started recording, and he saw that I had it, and he was like, hey, do you want me to, like, read that? Or I don't know exactly how it started. Either way, I had it with me, and it was just like, that's how it happens.
Yeah, I like that he read it. That was cool.
Yeah, good context there.
Specifically with regards to the post that I would want to talk about. So with regards to the second paragraph here, where you say we cannot say that parental consent is needed for everything, and I think I'm on board with you there. Minus gender change and brainwashing that's happening in schools. So I guess it would be your belief that gender change and brainwashing is happening in schools. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, a push for that. Yep, that would be correct.
Okay, a push for that.
Yep, for sure.
So it's not happening yet?
I think it's happening, yes. It's happening
Okay.
to an extent, and it's being pushed more and more to define it more specifically. So basically, you need parental consent, to have a sick day, to go on the field trip. You can't smoke till you're a certain age, you can't drink till you're a certain age, you can't drive till you're a certain age. But hey, if at 7, Johnny wants to change the very body he's in, he can just go and get some hormonal pills without the consent of his parents. And that's problematic.
Okay. And that's something that you're saying there's a push for that's happening right now?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess with regards to the schools, some of that is happening as we speak right now?
I would imagine. I mean, I see time and time stories online where parents, as we've seen over the last year, especially in the Virginia governor's election, parents came out and said, wait a second. They looked over the shoulder of their kids and said, what is my son and what is my daughter reading? And they are discovering material that is not only borderline, it's very explicit and pornographic to an extent. Some of these parents go in Colorado and they complain about these books. And when the parent starts reading what's in the book, they mute that school board meeting so that parent can be heard. So if this content's good enough for a grade schooler, why are we muting the parent at the school board meeting in Colorado? So
Yeah, okay, sure. I guess can we, do you have an example of this, of what exactly this material might be?
Sure. I mean, from what I've seen, these are mostly books,
Okay.
or could even be homework assignments to say, hey, which sexual positions do you prefer? Which ones do you think would be good? Or in
Okay.
books saying, hey, what could be your gender? Are you truly comfortable in who you are? Instead of focusing on history, that's the brainwashing part. Instead of focusing on history, focusing on budgeting, focusing on so many other things, career success, right? We are taking these kids' brains who are just developing and we're pushing them to their limits, beyond their limits to a point, and saying, Johnny, you should take those pills that sex offenders take and stop hormonal growth on your body to change your gender. And it leads to a place, speaking of minors, it leads to a place of now saying inclusivity and diversity is also taking what was once called a pedophile, somebody who molested children, speaking of minors in schools, right? And now they are to be called minor attracted persons. So we've started from a good thing where it's inclusivity and love and diversity in my post, respect for all, being mindful. I'm all for that. But we slowly have snowballed into this progression of fourth graders being tested in their favorite sex positions, preferred things of that sort. And I mean, you almost need a PhD to address somebody correctly nowadays, because it was LGBT, LGBTQ, LGBTQI plus. It's very difficult, and I think it comes back to identity. We all search two things in life. We search for purpose and relationships. As far as relationships, that's who we are based in, what's our identity based in. And it should be in so much more, and give these kids time to develop, instead of saying all there is to life is to discover who you are sexually. That's about it. And if you want to be bi or that, and just explore in this world of sexuality, that's all there is to life. I think that's really limiting these kids.
Pierce, what are
Hope
you
you don't
thinking
mind that I'm taking a few
while
notes.
he's talking?
Well, I'm basically writing everything down right now and just
Taking
trying,
notes?
trying to figure out what exactly he's talking about and trying to figure out what my next question is, trying to figure out how to ask him why he believes this.
Right. There's a lot going on, it seems like, all at once.
There's quite a few claims going on, yeah.
Yeah, pick up on a lot of stuff that may impact certain. It's like a moral issue potentially around like sanctity and degradation, if you're talking around like children and stuff like that. So that might be some of the intuitions that are in play.
Please do, absolutely. Yeah,
It just keeps me on track.
absolutely.
So, okay, so this kind of actually bled right into the other thing I wanted to talk about, I think. The other thing that I did want to talk about was, you say let's not use June to change genders or the definition of marriage between a man and a woman. So I think you kind of went into that a little bit, perhaps. So, okay, a few of the things that I noticed that you said. You said that like the schools, possibly teachers, I think you may have implied, are saying like, Johnny, you should take these pills. Is that kind of like a universal thing, or is it just some kids, or like?
Yeah, by promoting these things in curriculum, I'm sure kids would be curious, and they may try to cope with maybe depression or different challenges, and maybe they think that pill is the solution. Maybe Johnny being Susie is the solution, right?
Okay.
And so the availability of such pills, I don't think teachers are coming in saying for lunch all of you take 2 tablets. It's not that extreme, certainly. Yeah. But when that snowball, we open the book, we open the curriculum, we start doing homework on preferred sex positions and preferred pronouns, and really just stretch the limits of these kids' young developing brains. We say it's inappropriate to be, at a strip club for minors, but then we have, in Texas, we have these kids at a strip club where they're not necessarily stripping, but these are drag queens performing, and these kids are giving them tips, encouraged by the parents, and they're all celebrating. And if the parents want to do that, sure, do it for your bachelor party. But don't bring kids into the environment. Let the kids play soccer, bring them outside. that confusion, overwhelming, that's leading to depression. That's leading to this pressure and just overwhelming thoughts of how do I fit in? How do I be accepted by everybody? And as you can see from this post, you can't be accepted by everybody. And so in June, to that paragraph that you mentioned, let's tune in every month to promote care. If the LGBTQ plus community wants to be part of society and included, why do we have a separate floor for that community at UWGB at that campus? Why do we have a separate flag? Why do we have a separate month? Why do we push separation and disunity when we're calling for love, unity, and cohesion? But we are at the same time pulling and segregating those groups of separate and equal is not a good thing, as we've learned, right?
Yeah, right.
So, and that'll touch base on my thoughts on marriage between a man and a woman. Sure, it's legalized, but in some court cases, Plessy v. Ferguson, not all laws are good laws, right?
Okay.
Anything to comment on as of yet?
I have a hard time taking that one reasonably. I don't think that's an actual question. Why do we need to call them out and identify them while they're trying to become part of society? I don't think that's an honest question.
No, and it turned it kind of right back at him in a few moments. I know his question was rhetorical, but I just went ahead and asked him. I think he gave a pretty good answer, actually. He answered his own question.
I know your question here was rhetorical when you asked why is there a pride flag. I think you meant. I'm not sure if you used that exact word. Right.
Yeah.
I guess, why do you think there is?
Well, it's to bring awareness to an identity, right, of who the group of people are, and much like the American flag, rally behind a symbol, right? It really comes down to what is your source of truth? For us, it's the Constitution of America, right? And then what are your preferences and definitions behind it? We came up with a flag with 50 stars. We have preferences to have the flag up on government buildings, on pins. So you have to find the source of truth, right? And then from that source of truth, you make definitions, and then you create preferences, right? So if your source of truth is, hey, you can be any gender you want, that's a source of truth. So behind that, we almost need our own country. We need our own flag, rainbow, right? We need our own communities, our own floors on college campuses, and build it off from there. So source of truth, definition, and preferences. I can say my source of truth is the Bible. My preference is there's separation of church and state, I'm aware. But my preference that a pro-life flag is put up in October, right? Okay. So that's my preference, and my definition is based on my source of truth, which is the Bible, where God says, I knew you in your mother's womb, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, I knit you together, right? So we can, do this in circles all day,
I think, so you said a source of truth, and that's kind of what street epistemology really wants to find, all right? So, or at least on each individual basis, not as a whole. But anyway, so you say your source of truth is the Bible, and I understand that's what you're saying. And then you said the source of truth for, I think you were referring, I didn't actually write this down, but I think you were referring to transgender individuals, and you said their source of truth is, I'm not sure what you said. You said something about their gender preference?
Yeah, gender preference, or maybe what schools are teaching now.
What schools are teaching,
or what their friends are doing at school, and in June everybody's doing it. But so their source of truth could be their friends, it could be their parents, it could be an awful experience. Maybe, heaven forbid, they were assaulted or raped by the opposite gender.
I'm wondering, though, do you think that someone can not have a traumatic experience or anything else psychological, I guess you could say, and still be gay or trans? That's possible?
Yeah, I that's the hard part about if God created all of us, why did he create some of us to, want to prefer to be the other gender or
Yeah.
create new genders.
Yeah.
Or maybe even be born with both body parts, right? There's cases of that where,
Yeah.
you know,
Intersex individuals.
yeah, they have. And to me, those moments are, I realize that we live in a broken world. And I realize I'm a sinner, and I really live in a corrupted world where God's perfect creation and its design, Adam, a male, took Adam's rib and created Eve out of the rib to be a female, his companion and partner. That was perfection and purity. But then sin came in because Adam and Eve disobeyed and ate from the fruit, and sin came in, and it's tough because that wasn't God's perfect design. And there are non-traumatic experiences, and people are born in that way.
Yeah. In your belief that you believe that, let's say a gay marriage, that would be something that would be bad and wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to misrepresent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's inconsistent with God's word. I mean, God's word defines marriages between a man and a woman.
If it's inconsistent with God's word, does that mean that it is wrong?
Yes, if it's inconsistent with God's word, it's wrong. It may be legal per the Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
But yes, if it's inconsistent with God's word, it would be wrong, and that would be the sin in our lives. Like anything wrong, that we got to do 180 from. That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I guess if you didn't have your belief in God, would you still think that a gay marriage is wrong?
Well, I have to find my source of truth, right?
Okay.
I have to go back to my source of truth and ask myself, okay, if 60% of society is doing it, or 51%, right, it's the majority, I tend to be one that doesn't go with the flow, as you may see, you know. Didn't have my first alcoholic drink till 26, not because against my religion, personal preferences. Look up my story, you know, it's more of my biological dad having alcohol issues and all that. But yeah, we all have our personal preferences and our sources of truth. And so, yeah, if I didn't have God in my life and, you know, sin is sin, right? And I wanted to steal, I'd steal. You know, if I wanted to change my gender, you know, that's, you know, it's also based, if majority agrees, maybe I'll go with the flow, right? I don't want to be the unpopular kid in school and get bullied.
Okay.
I'll go with the flow, and that's what.
You think there might be a way to determine truth if you didn't have the Bible?
Not only truth, but like truth in values, like truth in a way to be a good person as well. Because like I'm also like, when I'm hearing him describe God, I'm also like putting in just the word good in place of God. And a lot of what he's saying makes more sense. It's more clear if you replace it with that potentially. So God and a way of making sense, way of making sense of morality is tightly connected in the psychology of religion.
Yes, clearly.
Yeah, keep going. And it's hard to keep track of how the conversation's going with all the skips. We're trying to make our best of it. It's been a long 2-hour conversation.
Good
Is
editing.
there a way to...
Yeah.
Your audio
Figure
is
out
a little
what-
bit cutting out, Reid. I missed what you said last. That
Oh,
last part.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep track of the conversation, even though it's edited down.
Yeah, and there's like minutes and minutes edited out. So.
untrue? Or what's good and bad?
Yeah, and there, yeah, that moral compass. I mean, society has created laws, and there's definitions, and there's books. But every author has their background. They have their story. They have their preferences. They have their source of truth.
Yeah.
So, which books am I reading? You know, my favorite is the former homeschool kids. I was homeschooled, or the Christian school kids. I was under the oppression of my parents in homeschool, or those Christian teachers, and they brainwashed me. But then I went to college, and I heard my professor, and it all made sense. Well, you're just choosing to listen to your professor and their background instead of your parents' background. So, you know, the enlightenment was you changing who you want to follow or believe, if you will. You know, for people who don't like me, then follow me on Facebook. They follow people who may be opposite at me. So, back to your question as far as if I didn't have the Bible, you know, I accepted Christ when I was 12, and man, back then I just was trying to be a good person, and I knew there was a God. I was never atheist. I knew there was a God, and to me, as long as people saw good things and they saw a happy Vanya and they saw good things, and I go to heaven because I could fake my way to it. But inside, I had a heart of stone. I wasn't loving. I wasn't caring. I couldn't say thank you. I couldn't say I love you. I was prideful. I was bitter. I was insecure. You know, I accepted Christ at 12, and that definitely changed. But boy, even back at 10, I mean, knowing there was a higher being, I guess just being good and like try to fit the laws and the expectations of the culture, I guess. That would be, and go with the flow with the culture, right? You have Hillary Clinton on the floor saying, man, between a man and a woman is a senator. And then she's running for president, and she's like, hurrah, right? You know, wrap me in the rainbow flag. So then that's a span of 20 years. So
I wonder if, so it seems like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm wrong all the time.
me too.
But it seems like your sole reason for your beliefs, pretty much the whole post, I think, would be God.
Yeah, who I am in Christ.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's my
Was your
social
belief in
truth.
God?
You're right.
Okay.
That's an accurate definition. Yeah.
Would you be comfortable talking about your belief in God and the reasons why?
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome.
Absolutely. So, sum that all up. You know where I was, and I can see where I am now with Christ in my life. I'm not perfect, but God did a redeeming work in my life, and I live every day just to be
I'm gonna pause it, Reid.
a better example for Him.
Yeah.
He just told a super, super long story that I completely cut out. Basically, before he was born, his dad was in the Russian military. He was in a submarine, terrible accident, lots of people died. His dad happened not to die. Then met his mother, then he was born. His mother tragically died, had a heart attack, I think, if I remember correctly. His dad wasn't very responsible, couldn't have him as a child, couldn't care for him. So then he went into, his family wanted to adopt him, but Russia has some really weird laws, so that wasn't a possibility. Went into, what's it called, an orphanage.
Yeah.
And he was going to be adopted by somebody from the United States, and then it didn't work out. And then he went to Spain, didn't work out. And then finally, his parents, who he calls his parents, finally went over to Russia, met him, and then Russia changed the rules, and they had to go back to the U.S., and then they had to come back and spend a whole ton of money. And then finally he did get adopted, and it was kind of a happy ending. So that's kind of his story. I left out plenty of details, but that's kind of the gist of it.
I know I fail. But I try to be a better light for Him, to give people who are looking for that purpose, who are looking for that hope, who are looking for that definition, who are looking for that source of truth. And I want to at least be a light and a spark for that conversation. Okay. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no problem. It was a great story. Thank you for sharing it.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I'll be adding these like psychosocial motivation cards. Like whenever I hear stuff like that, these are potential sources of bias for, wanting to confirm a certain claim that you're believing in for these potential psychological or social reasons. And it's just like, when I was listening to this before, it's like every other sentence is basically one of these things. And then it's like, once I hear a lot of that stuff, I want to start asking questions around, second best ways to potentially meeting these needs, fulfilling these ways, like psychological and social needs, because it's just that's all I'm hearing in this chat for pretty much the rest of the time here.
Okay. I don't think I did that. Should have done that.
It's cool.
My next question, but before I ask that question, I'm going to ask a different question.
Yeah.
Make sure it's okay to ask this question.
Please. Absolutely.
If, for whatever reason, you determined that God, Jesus, that you were unsure if it was true anymore, do you think that you would be okay with that?
I just don't see a life without that. I mean, that is the identity of who I am. And I mean, Lee Strobel, who was an atheist, went to pursue proving that God is not real. And this atheist, Lee Strobel, wrote the book, The Case for Christ, right?
Okay.
And there's plenty of examples of pastors becoming atheists, so right, it's not
Yeah.
not the source. But I truly am so confident and assured that beyond the 80 or 90 years, or heck, however many years God gives me here, that in eternity, whether in heaven or hell, and it's overwhelming to think about.
Wording this question in another way,
Yeah.
and probably a few other questions
Yeah,
would do the
absolutely.
same thing here.
Yeah.
If, for whatever reason, I guess, if you lost that, would you still continue being who you are? Would you?
Oh, no way.
No.
Without Christ, I am.
Okay.
I may try to be good. I may try to be popular. I may try to get all the followers and the friends. But without that source of life,
Okay.
I can build a really fancy house, a great Vanya on a sandy foundation.
Yeah.
But when that storm comes and destroys that sandy foundation, I'm done for. And so I'd rather build a foundation on a rock like Christ.
Okay.
But
Okay.
so I mean, without, let's say I was an atheist.
Yeah.
So I probably would get on board and, I would take this status, anything related to God, I'd take out. I'd say, on this day, we are mindful and respect for all. No, but there's nothing about God. It'd say, we support basically everybody to do anything you want with your life, with your choices. We love you for who you are. If you feel you should do that, go for it.
I mean to cut you off, but you mind if I get to the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't mean.
No,
okay.
that's fair. That's fair.
All right. So your story, it was an amazing story, and
Praise God.
yeah, and I'm wondering if that story was just the same story with one thing changing. Let's say instead of it being adopted by somebody in the United States,
Yeah.
let's say you were adopted by someone in Southeastern Asia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of them having a religion that's popular in the United States, let's
Yeah.
say it was
Yeah.
Hinduism, Taoism, something like that.
Yeah. I would be a totally different person.
Yeah, do you think that you'd be telling me the same things? Like if we were talking in this alternate reality, I guess I
Sure.
could say.
Yeah.
Would you be telling me that the reason that you believe that all the multiple gods of Taoism or Hinduism or whatever, it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
you would be telling me that the same reasons for those religions?
I'd be.
I can see where you're going with that question. Although with the outsider test, we're trying to figure out the quality of this reasoning, of this reason, and what is his reason is like. He has a changed life, or what is his reason?
I think his reason is like God sent his family to adopt him, I guess, basically. Personal experience.
He attributes the reason for his adoption to the Christian God.
I think so. I think that was the point in telling me the story.
Yeah.
How would you have asked it, Reid?
Like, can someone if someone from another religion, say Hindu, like a Hindu, came up to us right now and said they have a really great life now because they were adopted, and they said they believe in their Hindu God because of they attribute the adoption to the God allowing that to happen. Is that a good reason to believe in the Hindu God? I would try to ask that first. So, and if it's not a good reason for the Hindu to believe, would it be a good reason for you to believe in the Christian God? If that's
Right.
a fair parallel example.
So it would be a parallel situation with just that switched.
Yeah. We're trying to get to the quality of the reasoning people are providing.
Right.
Yeah.
Very curious. I mean, it comes down to making my faith my own, right? I recognize it's similar to, it's the same as my parents, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe in that alternate reality, it would be same as my other parents.
Yeah.
And I would and I would see my story through that lens. That's a possibility, but it comes down to making that faith my own. It's not something somebody forced. Again, it's between my heart and Jesus' heart, right?
Okay.
So, could I see the conclusion being in a different faith, but the same story? Yeah, because the story stays the same.
Yeah.
But the outcome, foundation of a personal relationship with Jesus or multiple deities, in alternate reality, sure, I could see that.
I guess let's say we're talking, and I brought a buddy with me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just call him Josh. And Josh is sitting here, and he's listening to you, Vanya. He's listening to me, Pierce.
Yeah.
And actually, I kind of set this up wrong.
No, all good. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's say we got Josh.
Yeah.
And we got Peter.
Yeah.
And you're listening to Josh and Peter.
Yeah.
And Josh has a very similar story to you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that he's a Hindu, and we got Peter over here, and he's a different religion, but they both came to their conclusion. Maybe they had a similar story than you, or maybe it wasn't as similar, but they both have a personal relationship with their God or gods.
Okay.
And you're over here, or there's another person over here listening to these two people, and they're both kind of using that same method to determine that their religion is true, right? How would a third party look and figure out, if they want to know what is true, figure out who's right and who may not be right?
Yeah. Well, I think the foundation there.
That was pretty good. I think of like, they're using the same potential reasoning of personal experience. And then methods are for like checking the quality of our reasoning. So that's how I think of that language. But, we can.
Is Christianity is the only religion where the God came for you to pursue relationships, sent Son Jesus to die for our sins, compared to every other religion has you earning and working towards that deity to be lower. And God made himself equal as man, right? So he came for us. That's a main difference, right? So there's that difference. It's very unique. Every other religion you go towards to be, here God came for us, and it's a relationship over a religion.
So I guess you wouldn't think that perhaps a Shinto might not have a personal relationship with their God or gods? That's not possible? Or
I think it's possible, but based on the theology of those religions, it doesn't work that way, where the God came for a relationship. It's a religion of do's and don'ts. But beyond that, that's kind of the foundational thing. But beyond that, I mean, like Lee Strobel in the case of Christ, right? Perfect example, an atheist. You have to look at the archaeological evidence, right? You know, where is the burden of proof? And so when you look at the accuracy of the Bible and the archaeological records, it is more accurate than Shakespeare itself. It has more copies than some of the most ancient and used articles. That stack is way higher of the consistency and the actual physical proof. And we continue to see archaeological evidence over and over with discoveries that are consistent with the biblical timeline. So by no means am I a theology expert or a religious historian, but you would need those things as well, right? And so when I look at the three things: my relationship of how the guy came for me, the proof, and some of these things in the case of Christ, but also what is the evidence that I've experienced in my life after I accepted Christ from the age of 12. Now, I didn't become a millionaire or a pastor by any means, but there are almost daily moments for those last 18 years where I've seen the fruits of what God has done in my life and is doing in my life to make me pursue Him that much more. I'm not forced. I feel the hope. I feel the love. And my purpose and identity is rooted in how God both has challenged me but also blessed me in the last 18 years.
Okay. I guess, so you got to kind of have, now, if you don't like my term, I can use any other word here.
No, please do. I'm Russian. Don't remember last time I was offended.
Okay. So, I guess your story, are you comfortable with me calling that a personal experience?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So, with regards, we got personal experience here in my left hand,
and
then we have archaeology in this hand, and then you also mentioned a vast copies of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of these holds the most weight? Which one gets you to believe? Which one is like the biggest reason for your belief?
Good question. Although I would have started with the psychosocial motivation stuff, and then after we found some potential second best ways to meet them, then go back to epistemology, this stuff.
I think it like anything comes down to our heart, right? And it comes down to my heart and believing that when God will judge my heart at the end of eternity, we'll be on the same page. So it comes down to that. It wasn't the personal experience that said, I believe God was all part of that, but I don't believe it's because I was adopted, I am a Christian. I wouldn't say I became a Christian because of my personal experience. I have to thank God by being stuck in this faith. I'm not. It was a personal choice and a relationship. But when I look at the story, it's more about the author of the story than the actual story. And instead of random evolutionary accidents and explosions and chances, like all of our lives, it's a purposeful design with pain and sorrow, but also hope and love and joy that God didn't say he will eliminate, but he will walk us through those things. So I'm aware of my personal experiences, and I'm aware that you need evidence for God, and I've looked into those things. Mm-hmm. But based on a combination of those two things of, just feeling it in my life, you have to feel in your soul and your heart. I can't force somebody to do that. They have to determine on their own, right? And so I wasn't like, oh, my parents went to this church, I had this amazing experience, and somehow I was curious about this, and I wanted to fit in, and all this life later, I've chosen to live on my parents' faith, right? I've made it my own. It's been my own from day one. And to thank God I have to be stuck in this faith. No, not at all. It's because of what he did for me, how he transformed my life. I just want to be more like him. I'm not better than anybody else. I just want to be more like him and help others along the way because he helped me along the way. Okay. And along with that can be just that emotion. I've looked at, okay, what is the biblical record, right? Again, I'm not a scholar, but you got to have some consistency, and there's, Jesus wasn't made up, Bible stories were made up. There's archaeological evidence that's been found for a lot of these things, not all of them. They're consistent timelines, and that only strengthens and encourages me more to connect my personal story and experiences to some of those concrete things. It can't just be feelings and emotions.
Okay.
I have a question.
So,
like how he's going reason after reason after reason, and should you interrupt them? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, because you can't deal with all of them as a one at a time, and you can't really combine them. Do you just listen? What?
Well, that's what I ended up doing, but I really do need to learn how to interrupt more and not just let them go on forever and ever and ever. And because
that's only if you're concerned about the audience time. In the actual conversation, nobody ever gets bored of being listened to. If you have the time, they will have the time to talk. That's okay.
But it's good for rapport, to keep rapport high.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for rapport. And then once you've gotten a good bit of listen under your belt, then you can ask them which is the ones that matter the most, and then just focus in on those. Some of them support the others, like his personal experience confirms his something, confirms his this, and then Bible is source of truth. There's a line in there somewhere. And if he lost the personal experience, or if he changed the attribution, would that change the thing down the line? And if it wouldn't, just work on that thing down the line.
Right. I feel like I would have interrupted and been like, can we get back to what we were talking about before? And that might have...
Which is usually okay. Yeah, usually, like Pine Creek, he you got to spend those report points.
Spend the points. Yeah.
Spend the points a little bit. Be willing to spend the points. It's important to stay on the positive side of the ledger, but all those extra points, don't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've got good enough rapport to.
Yeah, I definitely Could have. I got a lot of rapport in the bank at this point.
Yeah.
And you can break in trying to keep the burden of understanding on yourself. Like, let me just try to get this straight. What I'm hearing you say is blah, 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 stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Repeating.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you said it can't just be feelings and emotions. So that's not really a factor in your belief at all, or?
Well, I mean, it is. I mean,
Okay.
when, before I accepted Christ, I had a heart stone. I was angry. I couldn't say thank you. Couldn't hug people. Couldn't say I love you. He changes you from the inside out so that your emotions change. But I'm saying you can't just like live in this emotional high of like, my life is great and Jesus is good and I am always happy. I go through the reality of this life in this world, not of this world, right? But in this world, through my ups and downs, emotions. But there also needs to be hard and firm fruit and evidence. Like, what's the fruit of my life now that I've accepted Christ, right? How am I living for Him and through Him in a way? So, yes, there is emotion and,
I would have tried to ask, how does the fruit of your life relate to a God existing at all? Like, question the logical inference of that evidence. Does the more fruit in your life increase the probability that the God exists? Or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been good.
So there's an emotion, but when I mention the emotional experiences, it's the high schoolers or college kids go to a Christian camp or Christian retreat. They go, they hear the music, they hear the pastor, and like, yes, I'm in for Jesus. And they come back to school, and they're getting bullied and made fun of. Then that kind of high goes away, and then they start questioning everything. So it's a balance. It's a balance of the two.
Can someone use that emotion and come to a conclusion that is not correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They can in fact, say that same-sex marriage is in line with the Bible, right? But that's just not theologically accurate, right? So, I speaking truth in love here, right? Churches are changing their theologies and morphing towards the norms of the society instead of standing on the foundation that has lasted centuries and having Him be that hope. He hasn't failed me. I truly feel at peace when it's just me and Jesus. Absolutely.
Do you think that someone can feel at peace and not have any religious beliefs? That they can feel very similar to the way you feel?
They could,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's what passive control is about, like just feeling peace in life.
Absolutely. They could say, hey, I live a good life. I'm at peace in my, gay or lesbian relationship.
Yeah.
And, and that's where it's, up to them to see, is this the very best of life or what's beyond this life? And if they press into that, maybe they see something else, but if not, then...
I guess, is feeling at peace a good way to determine what's true if someone can feel at peace and come to a different conclusion than you?
Yeah, they could definitely come to a different conclusion. It's just how they choose to live their life. Absolutely. And that's where my hope is that they start thinking, okay, if all of us, we worship or idolize something. We're going to be worshiping our house or idolizing a car, but just by instinctively we do that.
I'm wondering if I were to take away, or not me, that sounds kind of rude.
No, you're good.
If you were to be convinced that the archaeology, I can't say that word apparently.
I'm the same word. English is my second language. I feel you. But the stuff in the dirt.
Yeah, the stuff in the dirt.
Yeah.
If you were to find that was no longer sufficient, if you were to find that the multiple copies of the Bible, many multiple copies, if that wasn't sufficient anymore, if you were to take everything away except for that personal experience, does that affect your belief? Do you believe less and less, or is it still the same?
I would have to determine my source of truth, right? So if I don't have the Bible, I never discovered it. If I'm in some third world country, I never discovered the Bible.
I think you misunderstood my question, actually.
Okay.
You still have the Bible.
Yeah.
But the
maybe, but more of a burden on yourself. Like, I don't think I explained that as well as I could have. Maybe.
Yeah.
Logic.
Okay.
It's stuff in the
Yeah,
dirt.
stuff in the dirt is gone. Okay, so if there's
So, yeah.
no physical proof for what happened in the Bible, and the Bible's a fairy tale.
That not necessarily that the
Okay.
Bible is a fairy tale.
Okay.
That's not what my question meant. The intent of my question.
No, you're good.
I meant, I guess there is no hard facts that the Bible is true. Just
So like an alternate reality.
yeah, like you can't determine using
Yeah.
that the Bible is true.
Okay.
That you just have kind of your personal experience to go on and nothing else. Do you still believe as much as you believe today?
It's an interesting thought. I mean, have my personal experience, and then you have this book that doesn't have burden of proof, right? And so there, I'm more guided by just solely my emotions then. I'm just guided by my emotions and what I feel to be true instead of what I know to be true based on that stuff in the dirt. And more importantly, the stuff that has impacted my heart and how God has worked through that as well. But yeah, if it was just pure on emotion, I mean, yeah, I could reach all sorts of conclusions. And what's your heart behind that? Is your heart to be open to the radical transformation in the beautiful way by God, or to prove God wrong? Lee Strobel, it transformed his life in a personal way. Yeah. But if your hypothesis is not even a hypothesis, it's just the final paragraph of a paper, and now you're just putting in fluff to support the final. Or if you have an open end to the paper and you're truly doing discovery, and what do you reach in that paper, in that final paragraph, based on the discovery? So right now there's the camps of, you can have the camp of, oh, I'm a Christian, and based on just my feelings, man, my parents said that, my church said that, Bible sounds kind of cool. There's no stuff in the dirt, but if I'm stubborn, that's my end, and no matter what, I'm going to frame my argument around it. But if you're truly curious, as I was just a good person. I was Russian Orthodox, I guess, somewhat religious, but, believe in a higher being. So you have to start with that. Where's your heart at? A lot of people just are born like, no God, never. Or some people might be, no God, my family's atheist or whatever. God failed me. But then start doing the praying, start doing the research. Yeah. And they have an open paragraph at the end of that paper. And if they truly have that open and they reach their conclusion, that could be a transformational moment in their lives. Yeah. But I think a lot of us have that final paragraph written, and we just frame it around.
So we
it.
haven't. That's kind of an analogy to many of us don't have an open mind. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely. And so,
what could you learn that would change your confidence in your belief in God?
If in my life, after accepting Christ to this very day, I didn't feel answered prayers or God's guidance or wisdom, and it was just pointless, just me talking to a tree or to air, and I didn't, feel or thought differently about my outlook on life, then that would impact that.
How would you know if a prayer was answered or not answered?
Well, a lot of it would be there's a specific need or request, or maybe even a thanks, right? And it comes to the desired outcome. But sometimes it's an undesired outcome, right?
Yeah.
And through that, still pressing into God and be like, God, even though I prayed for something differently, is it maybe not your timing yet? And sometimes maybe it's different timing. So for my 17th birthday, a month before, my parents sent me back to Russia. I'm just kidding. That was their gift. They paid for a plane ticket, and I went back to see my 3 aunts, 2 uncles, cousins, half cousins, second cousins. It was great. I landed in Moscow, then flew into Tomsk, and I just could not wait.
I'm not sure if you covered this potential point about the answered prayer, but you could go into trying to clarify if that's what he's saying, if it's a test that can only confirm his claim, and talk about the issues with that potentially.
I think I may have asked one question that was a little bit like that, but yeah, I took it out.
Okay.
To talk to my biological dad and give him this hope of the gospel of Jesus coming to die for our sins.
Gina's question: have you had any contact with him since the conversation?
Yeah, I did talk to him a little bit, mostly about like comments in the Green Bay Llama and on the subreddit Green Bay. There was a lot of people who were not pleased with him, I guess. And the internet being the internet, they're gonna call you names and say mean things.
I disagree. You must be evil.
Yeah, it's. I just talked to him a little bit about that, but
He seems like the kind of guy that thinks out loud and likes to talk through his thoughts. And I think this is probably really good for him to to have this outlet for have you listening to him and let him just kind of say whatever he's thinking. And he's like going through it, and you can tell he's really thinking about it. I think it's really good for him.
yeah, there was a few questions where he really stopped and didn't respond right away and thought about it. So it was good to see that.
He's taking the questions really seriously.
Absolutely.
It's nice.
Giving us a hope in the future. And I got in the car with my aunt and uncle and I said, hey, let's go see Dad. And she said, Vanya, 6 months ago, he was crossing the street drunk, got hit by a car and died. That's the one moment I do remember thinking, God, this was my mission. You called me to share your love and goodness, and now for all of you to be in hell. And that was a difficult month in Russia. I remember walking back the neighborhood where I walked back, asking my neighbors for food. Walked back to the orphanage. I just lost it there.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That was a tough month. And I remember calling back to my parents here and I said, man, like, why would God do this?
Yeah.
You know, is my dad in heaven? Is he in hell?
Well, I'm so sorry that happened.
Thank you. It's, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's,
Definitely
hard to explain,
Yeah.
explain. But that's my hope that one day, I'll see him.
Sure.
And we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I guess I want to go back to kind of the happy thoughts here.
Yeah, for sure.
So you were engaged to this woman,
Mm-hmm.
and just she kind of put that knife right in the back.
Yeah.
Then you dated, and that didn't work out yet. But then you found this amazing person, and that's the person you're about to marry, I presume. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I guess.
Engagement pictures tomorrow.
Yeah, awesome. So, do you think that all the events that you described and I kind of repeated back to you, do you think those events could have happened without a God?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because those were personal decisions that were made,
Yeah.
or things that happened. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I don't think God necessarily, kind of spins the world back like a, spinny thing and just lets it spin out of control for the next few thousand years. Let's say I believe that there wasn't a God, then, those events could have happened. Those are personal choices, right? Love is a choice. She or I have to choose to love each other, right?
Right.
Second relationship, it was, a choice of faith preferences, actually, right? And how that works out. Still a great person, and I wish them both nothing but the best. I truly do. So you're right, yeah. Without a God, those things could have happened, yes.
Okay. I guess that might not necessarily be a good reason to believe that being the reason to believe that a God does exist. If those things could have happened without a God, right? Are we on the same page there?
Sure.
That's a good way to ask it. But I wonder if we could also ask it like, okay, so it potentially is not. It's possible this had nothing to do with God. How could we determine how probable it actually did or did not have anything to do with God? Is really like try to get more around testability around that claim, maybe.
yeah, that would have been a much better way to ask that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the same thing for prayer as well?
To pray and then think that outcomes are not based on God's answered prayer.
Kind of the same thing
Yeah.
where these events could have happened without a God. I guess if those things could happen without a God,
Sure.
is answered prayer a good reason to believe that there is a God?
It's part, again, it's all parts of that, right? It all starts with your heart, right, and your heart condition, where you're at. But
I would have asked, what do you mean by that?
I didn't know what he meant. He ends up meaning like not an actual heart condition, just like
Yeah, no.
yeah. I didn't know at first, but
events happen, and right, if you're an atheist, you would think events just happen because they happen, right, and that's just your point of view. But there are some crazy testimonies and testimonials of.
All right, I think I'm gonna wrap it up with one last question, and then I'll let you go because
Absolutely.
I don't know how long you expected. But
No, this was great.
Okay, good.
I'm glad to be, thinking these things through. This is very well done.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. So, what was the question I was going to ask now?
No, you're good.
What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So, with regards to a God's, I guess a higher power of any kind, it doesn't really matter. What is the best way to determine, the most reliable way to determine that God or God's higher power in general is true and corresponds with reality? What's the best way?
I would say best way is at least give it a shot. Give it a shot. Read the Bible, do some praying, right?
I guess if someone else read like the Quran or another holy book, if that's the best way, how do we figure out which one of those is true?
I would say find the one that's different, and the one that's different is the one where the God came down, made himself man, and reached for us and searched for us, and is still there for us, compared to all these other ones that say worship this higher thing.
Is something that's different always, with regards to claims about reality, it can be anything, is the one that's different always the one that's true?
Not necessarily.
In this
something
case?
could be different. But in this case, you go to the burden of proof, the archaeological records, right, to experiences in your life, that heart condition, right? It's a balance of all of those things. So it's not only different, but it has the most proof of any religion out there.
I would have asked, what do you mean by different? And how does something being different relate to it being true? Aren't all claims different? What do you mean by different?
Yeah.
Lots of questions.
I just read 70 pages on proof for the LDS Church, and no, it is not the best. That is a better attested everything. Yeah, there's better evidence.
Is the more different, the more true? Are they connected somehow?
What does different mean? Anyway,
And it's unique, not just to be unique, it's radically, not the separation of church and state, but America, it's a uniquely different concept. Russia said how many constitutions? 20-some? How did all this happen by accident? When we blow up a building, that thing goes down. Miller Park, when we took that thing down, County Stadium, we took that thing down. It went down, right? And we created a beautiful Miller Park with a lot of delicate work. And so here we have, evolution. You have an Big Bang, an explosion, and somehow all of that is orchestrated. All of this is orchestrated by that explosion.
I'm not saying this would happen, but let's say you decided to study Big Bang cosmology, and for whatever reason you were able to determine to your satisfaction that the Big Bang theory is true. Do you still believe in God?
I would, yeah.
I would try to get this specific level of confidence and ask them, would your level of confidence change, and if so, how much?
Be a different faith. I think I see your point there, though. it would be a different faith because I have to throw Genesis out though. I have to scrap Genesis, and I start scrapping parts of the Bible,
Sure.
and eventually I have to be like, you know what? My knowledge and understanding, I want to be the creator, I want to be the creation. And it might come to a point where I may believe, I might eventually push away God, right? Because I now become the creator, I'm no longer the creation. And based on here, I will change the heart. And then what's my new source of truth? Is it my Corvette? Is it Buddha? Is it politics? What is it? What's the next thing, right? So I see your question. It's a fair question. So if I studied and was somehow persuaded to the Big Bang is a thing, oh man, if my source of truth, God's first book in Genesis, you scrap that, oh, we got some questions, right?
Do you think it's possible
It's kind of
that
hopeless.
that people,
Yeah.
maybe Christians,
Yeah.
I would think so. Do you think it's possible that they might look at the Big Bang and believe that was God doing that?
Yeah, there are Christians who, believe in evolution, but also in the Bible.
Right.
And so my challenge to them there, if you believe that, as the scripture says, that the Bible is inspired, undeniable, word of God, how can you take away the first book and say, well, minus that is good, but then it gets into, oh, maybe this book is no good, and then this book, and we start cherry picking, right? And so it's like, what do you read the Bible to be, right? You know, I get married, I have a kid, and if one of my boy is gay and my girl is lesbian, I can't force my faith on them, but I will not disown them. I will still love them because I love them for who they are as people, as my kids. Do I approve? You know, it's like you have a family member who did something wrong is in jail. Do you condone what they did? No, but you still love them. You know?
Just wondering, quick question.
Yeah.
If your son or daughter did end up being gay,
Yeah.
lesbian, as you said,
Yeah.
would you want them to be able to get married?
If they saw happiness and, you know, that's a choice they chose to do, then that's their choice to do. And
Okay.
I would be okay with that.
Okay.
But to me, you know, I would see that as more of a ceremony because marriage is instituted by God between a man and a woman. And I would attend that, and I would, you know, I would want to support my child, recognizing I don't agree with the decision, and I would prefer they didn't do that. But Christ didn't win over the sinners by walking away. He dined with the sinners, the prostitutes, the tax collectors. And so to me, my hope would be that, hey, you know, that one day they'll come to Christ. That'd be my prayer, just like with my dad. If they died in their marriage of the opposite gender, and then that's really up to God to make that call. And to those who are in those relationships now, I can't make that call. If, you know, that's God's judgment. But based on God's word, I don't see a path between those choices and His promise of eternity in heaven. So it'd be very hard. It'd be very hard. I feel it for so many parents and people. And
Kind of going to put almost true to epistemology kind of aside just for the moment. I kind of did it with that question. But I'm just going to kind of get out of that for a moment.
Yeah.
I take it that the impression that I got, and I think this impression is right, is that you wouldn't support gay marriage as a law. Would I be correct with that or incorrect?
But marriage is between a man and a woman. Is there a unity ceremony, if you will, or however you want to define it, or the societal marriage, like societal marriage and God's marriage? Those are two different things. Because God's marriage is between a man and a woman. Yeah.
I'm wondering if we can come to almost an agreement here.
Okay.
I wonder if we could agree that a marriage between, let's say, a Christian man and a Christian woman, we can call that biblical marriage.
Yeah.
And then perhaps we can call maybe a marriage between an atheist man and an atheist woman. Maybe we can just call that marriage. maybe we can call between a woman and another woman. We can just call that marriage. Can we? Are we on the same page there?
I mean, as defined by society, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the name we give for an institution, right? And it's marriage. So yeah, those people are married, but it is not the definition of God or the fullest extent that God intended it to be in the definition of the biblical marriage.
So I'm wondering if this controversy is just a definition problem.
Definition, a source of truth and a preference problem. Yeah, but you're right.
Okay.
You're right. That's a fair point. Yeah, comes down to what is your source of truth that you define and your preference out of that definition. So so I mean the semantics, right? The semantics of.
I like how you did that.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah.
I don't know if that was SE or what that was, but I just kind of went for it and turned out okay.
It's
And I
well
love
within
how-
the liberal Pine Creek definition.
Yeah. Just the way he was so serious and considering about his children being gay and how he would feel about that and how he would react to that, and saying the words out loud. He probably hasn't ever talked about that before with anybody, or considered it maybe even. So just having those new wheels start moving. It's good.
It really, just going on the record, it really, really grates on my ears having somebody pathologize queerness. Thank you for at least the relief, because it seemed like there was some positive progress there.
Yeah, maybe.
Going into the definitions, I think was good. I like that.
Yeah. At least, positive according to my worldview. It's of course subjective.
Yeah, it's kind of a way of clarifying not so much the claim, but just the consequences of believing the claim in terms of public policy expectations. Maybe that's something to do with these political questions, get more clarity on all of that. Yeah, it's good.
Questions for you. So I'm going to give you a chance to basically ask me anything that you would like.
Yeah.
If you have any.
This, number one, thank you for doing this. This was really good. Very helpful for me to even think through some of these things.
Good.
I would ask, as a third party and outsider, when you saw this post, how did it make you feel, and what were some of your reactions from this post?
Okay. Difficult question.
You don't have to answer it,
No,
but
I can answer it.
Okay.
I was a little frustrated.
Okay.
In all honesty.
okay.
Not because. Let me actually look at it for a moment again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so I
Yeah, no, that's
kinda
fair.
know what I guess.
Are you seeing kind of a juxtaposition, perhaps, between love and respect, yet truth and conviction, and how it's still not necessarily okay? I could see.
I think the reason I felt a little bit, I would say disheartened.
Okay.
Would be a good word to use.
That's fair.
And the reason why is I understand that you mean the best for everybody. I can tell by talking to you, even before that, reading this, I think I could tell that you wanted what was best for everybody. I think we share a common goal.
Yeah.
I think that goal being we want to prioritize a human well-being.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yes.
I think we absolutely share that goal, and I took notice of that in your post. I totally did.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But at the same time, I do feel like some of the content, the way I determine what is true and what is untrue, I think there's a little bit of a disagreement there. So I may determine that something is true and may be better for someone's well-being, and you might look at something and determine a truth and determine that something else is better for someone's well-being.
Yeah.
So I guess
That's fair.
Yeah, and I guess some of the harder facts, for example, the schools.
Yeah.
I think we may have some disagreement
fair.
on that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And what I love about you doing this is so much better for mental health. Not this.
Yes.
So much better for mental health. And the goal of my post, I know I speak truth and love, and truth can be divisive sometimes. the goal is to maybe get more of this in-person dialogue, hopefully, that people, can get away from the walls and the keyboard warriors. At my heart, I don't hate people, I don't hate any communities. But if I wanted to please everybody, I'd be selling ice cream, right? And both in pursuing politics, in leadership at work, and who I am in my faith. I can never do that. Because if we just said, hey, all go do your thing, there wouldn't be ethics or morals. Somebody created those, right? We have a guiding compass. So, awesome. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and agreeing to this.
Absolutely. I'm glad the sun came out. Kind of warmed up a little bit there.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Well, okay, keep up with the good work.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cordial chat. Very chill.
Very nice.
Explored a lot there. Yeah, good stuff.
What?
If you had a button that you could push that would change his mind, would that help? Would you do it? Would that be good for him?
I think so. Well, it depends in what way, probably. I know that he's a politician currently, I think, technically. And I think he probably has some bigger aspirations. I think he ran for alderman several years ago. I think it would probably be good for his political career if he did change his mind.
Oh, really?
I
It would be good.
if he.
Depends on where he is, right?
Yeah.
It seems like theism is a bonus in most of the country.
Oh, I actually meant the whole gay marriage part.
Oh, just the gay marriage part. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, I would definitely agree. I would want to change his mind on the gay marriage more toward my side. I think that wouldn't be the kind of fundamental change that would make or break his marriage or other such things. I'm thinking more along the lines of if you knew exactly the thing that would change his faith, would you hand it to him? That's all the answer I needed. Thank you.
Okay.
A long stop and think. That's the important answer right there.
To actually give you an answer, I don't think it would. I think he thinks it would be like this huge. He would become a completely different person, and in some ways he probably would, because I think he would become a little more accepting of. I mean, he is accepting of people, but I don't think it would be like this big explosion moment. I think he'd still be who he is. I don't think.
Yeah.
That's
my experience. People don't become smarter or nicer or anything. They do move from the right to the left, though, politically, when if they drop theism. There's a strong move in that direction. They tend to become more pro-LGBT and pro-individual rights and several other things. That seems to be a trend.
I certainly did, for sure.
Yeah, me too. Big way.
Politically. Mm-hmm. He also talked a lot about having a source of truth. So I think if he lost his source of truth, he might have some difficulty trying to find a way to replace that, to figure out something else in his life that he could use as a guide. That could be tricky as a replacement thing.
He might fall into.
Like he mentioned that many times, the source of truth.
I bet he has other sources of truth that he trusts for things that are not in the Bible. I bet if you asked him what the formula of water is, he could find a source of truth that had nothing to do with theology that he would have firm confidence in.
Yeah.
Just based on some of his claims, I imagine like another source of truth might be certain radio shows that he may listen to. So
Authority type
Yeah,
figure,
yeah.
maybe. You could defer to.
I'm thinking so. I know Gina asked a question. Did this conversation, which she's referring to the contact I had with Vanya after speaking with them, did that result in any further reflection afterwards? Privately, I really had minimal contact with him. I just sent him the screenshot and said, "Hey, are you okay with this?" But that other communication was actually in that Facebook group. I was kind of responding to a few comments here and there, mostly to people who were saying things that were just about the video that were false, saying that he said things that he didn't actually say, which was kind of annoying. But yeah, there was definitely no further reflection. I think those people just kind of pushed him more towards into his beliefs, in all honesty, just because they were attacking him. That's typically what you do. What happens when someone attacks you, you're not going to be, oh, that person is totally right. No, you're going to just go further into thinking that you're right.
In which direction were they misrepresenting him?
I know at least one comment was oh, he's afraid of people who are gay and atheist. It's that's just blatantly untrue.
Yeah, gaytheists.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't afraid of me. He clearly was very cordial to me. We had a very nice conversation, so I don't know why people were saying that. It was kind of.
Well, there's this confusion between phobe and dislike or pathologize.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times when you pathologize queerness or something, that people think you're afraid of it. And I think that's a slip up in our language. I think we can be a bit more nuanced.
And a lot of the comments at the beginning that he was making about the drag queens reading kids' books and the porn in the children's literature.
Yeah, some of that.
I haven't heard any of that. I mean, it might have happened. And teachers giving pills to children. I don't
think that's allowed. I also don't think I don't think I'd stay out of jail if I were asking children their favorite sexual positions. I think that would just get me arrested.
There's a lot of things there that just didn't sound I don't know where he got that information from that convinced him that this is happening as a regular thing, and that's why I got to homeschool my kids now, because this is going to happen if I send them to public school. My kids went to public school. I know a lot of kids that do, and there's some bad teachers. It's going to happen, but I haven't heard anything like that kind of stuff. But not saying it never happened, but
yeah, libs of TikTok on Twitter will find you some sources of some stuff. But how representative is that stuff of the general teacher population? Hard to know. But these concerns aren't coming out of nowhere. So those are other conversations to potentially have.
Yeah. Well, and equating the drag queens with child molesters and making those kind of connections.
Yeah, drag queens and strippers are apparently in the same category.
Yeah, there's not really a connection. So that seems like a little more education might fix that, if he was open to getting to know some trans people or some drag queens, or getting involved in a LGBT community a little bit. Get to know some
I've heard from the LA Gay and Lesbian Center that one of the best ways is just to have dinner with a queer family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works about the best of any of the things.
Talk to people, get to know them, and you realize they're just normal people.
Wonder if I should do that. I could make that happen.
Yeah, I bet there's queer families in Green Bay. Is that? Am I correct? This is Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not outing you.
I think that they'd be willing to have dinner with Vanya. Bring my wife. Bring them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Open it. Just the whole agenda is, hi, we could be friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not SE, of course. That's canvassing. Just to be clear, this isn't SE anymore.
Another potential thing to talk about is an additional goal when doing SE, particularly with like politicians, if you ever have that rare opportunity, is to expose the politician or just to expose the actual genuine beliefs of someone to a wider audience. That's not merely understanding or inspiring reflection or attempting to change their mind, the actual individual you're talking to. It's in the context of it, recording a conversation and creating content about it, obviously. But if you are recording conversations, could a legitimate goal be to, in addition to the other goals, to expose them potentially? I don't think it would be valid if you only went in there with that only goal.
It depends on what expose means.
Yeah. Is that a corruption?
If it's exposed to their detriment, like a reporter you don't want to see, then that might be bad. But expose the audience to a diversity of viewpoints. Hell yes.
Yeah, I mean,
As long as I'm not victimizing the person I'm exposing, then I don't feel so good. Although politicians and public figures, maybe there's a different standard.
say you want the politician to not be elected next term, and they believe certain things that
Sure.
maybe don't want public, so you potentially try to interview them to have them give them their
Would that be a bad thing to go in with that goal? If you felt strongly against their beliefs? I don't know.
Yeah, it would be a sacrifice of potentially your individual relationship with that person. And I assume they wouldn't want to continue talking to you if they learned.
Yeah.
The goal is to get.
It might also spoil things for future interlocutors.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something to
I
think about.
think the important thing would be just consent, as long as they know you're recording them and you're putting it online or whatever, right?
Yeah, platforming them. Sure. Heck yeah.
It's basically free advertising for them in a way.
Yeah, you can say, I want to reveal as clearly as possible what you believe and why, so that the general public can make their own decision.
Mm-hmm.
You can say that. That's perfectly fine.
Because yesterday I actually talked to another Green Bay politician. I talked to, I don't even remember his name. He's an alderman. He's not, he doesn't represent me, but I still talked to him, and it was pretty cool. And his claim I actually agreed with. So it was, those conversations are always different, much different than this one. This one, so.
All right, cool. Well,
Seeing something you agree with is its own challenge.
Oh yeah, it's very hard to be challenging towards something you agree with, because it's almost like being challenging of yourself. So
I'd love to try that with you sometime.
sure.
I enjoy being needlessly pedantic.
For fun.
Yes. Pedantry for fun and profit.
even with the little video, we made it under 2 hours, so pretty good.
Yeah, we did good, I guess.
Thank you.
Anything more to talk about?
No.
I can't hear.
Pierce, I'm losing your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess, do we have anything else to discuss regarding it, or should we start to wrap it up?
I'm not catching this.
Yeah, just anything.
He's asking if we should wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say I like seeing this interaction of going from a public Facebook comment that's very contentious and heated to a one-on-one, very chill chat. I'd love to see more of that happen. It's great.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. That's
Love that.
that's what I'm going for.
Great.
Was anyone in the panel or audience moved toward Vanya's position?
I don't think so.
No.
Mm-mm.
Not me. And,
He was kind of using the shotgun approach. of just throwing everything out there.
Yeah.
There was just a lot to take in.
Righto. All right. Tomorrow we're doing another call-in show. At least me, Dali, and I are. Y'all are free to
Mhm.
as well. We'll see you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern,
Yep.
10 p.m. Europe.
2
All right.
p.m. Mountain.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, that's good. I guess cool. See everybody later. Peace out.
Thank you. Later.
Thank you.